If I hit this button, I think it will do what I want it to do. Yeah. Okay. So it's like PowerPoint. This is Google Slides, but it keeps me on track. So pricing in the creative space. I will start off by saying that these are my opinions. This is how I approach it. May or may not work for you, but I think that changing your focus from yourself to your customers is fundamental. And that's the basis for everything that I'm talking about here, is changing the focus from you to your customers. Now, what doesn't matter? Your material costs don't matter. Your expenses don't matter. Your time doesn't matter, except for when it does. And the thing is that that's not the first question you should be asking. Your customer doesn't care about your costs. They couldn't care less how much it costs you to make something, unless you're selling something of a commodity like gold or silver or something like that that has a market value that is determined, on a trading floor. Then, even then they don't care what your cost is. But then again, you don't set the price. But your customer is looking for value, and value means that they are getting more than what they're paying. And that's very subjective. That's something that has nothing to do with your costs. If I come back here, what is it? When it comes to whether a customer enjoys your products or not, it doesn't matter what it costs you to make it. It's all about what they want and how they perceive it. And I have a tip here. Always keep your focus on your customers' needs and fill them. Again, I want to change the focus from you to the customer. And I want the customer to be front and center of all of your thoughts, because they're the ones with the money. They're the ones that are going to either give it to you or not. So now, like I said, value determines pricing, not costs. All your customer cares about is whether or not your product fulfills their need and that the value of what they're getting is greater than what they're paying. That's simple. I mean, that's the math that your customer is doing in their head, whether they know it or not. That's what they're doing in their head. Is in the case of a toy, how many times are they going to use it? Or even a pair of pants. I mean, you go to Gap and buy a pair of jeans and you spend 30, 50, 60 bucks for them. And you're going to, well, I know that George does this, but thinks, well, how many times am I going to wear them? Well, if I wear them for a couple of years and I wear them once a month, then, I'm going to wear them for 48 times or 60 times or whatever the number is. And you go, okay, well, would I pay $1 to wear those jeans for a day? Okay. Yeah. I mean, and that's kind of, we're kind of like that, but it's that determination of value that answers the question for the customer. And in my opinion, if you're having to justify your prices by talking about your costs, then you don't believe in the value of your work. You don't trust the value of your work. And so there's a confidence that has to exist there. But once you put the focus on the customer and satisfying what they want, then the value becomes apparent. As an example, if you found a Picasso at a flea market and bought it for $10, would you sell it for $20? I mean, you're doubling your money. What about $100? Yeah, 10 times what you paid for it. I don't know. I mean, that's a pretty good deal, right? You got 10 times on your money. Again, the value has nothing to do with what you paid for it. It has to do with what other people perceive as the value of it. The value is determined on the other side of the counter, not on your side. So now, again, here's a quick overview of, here's the process. What is the value to the customer? And then we ask, can you make that product for that price? And that's a big and, make a profit, because the profit is where sustainability comes from. Again, the question number one is about the customer. What is the value to the customer and what is the value that they are perceiving? Then it's a matter of figuring out how to do it for that price. And if you can't figure out how to do it for that price, then you figured out that that's not a reasonable product for you to create, to make, to sell. And so you move on and you find something else. Or you redesign and you go back and you turn it into a new product that has more perceived value. So, by approaching the business from this perspective, you understand your customers and what they want versus what you're trying to sell them. And I don't like sales. I'm not a good salesman. I don't do that well, but I'm a problem solver, and I do a really good job of helping people find what solves their problems, what fulfills their needs, what is valuable to them. So again, now think about your costs and then count everything that goes into the costs, even if you aren't paying for it now. And I mean, if you're working out a spare bedroom, make sure that you build in something into your costs that accounts for the rent that you would be paying. Even if you're not paying, a business insurance at this point, build that into your system. Build that into your costs so that you can be prepared when you do scale up. And this is a partial list of costs that you might see. And I've kind of and again, this is a partial list, but there's a lot on here. The software that I use, the equipment that I use, the equipment is pretty self-explanatory, but the software I use for all of my shipping has a cost. Marketing and advertising, that's a little bit fudgeable because, I do all of my own marketing and advertising. But if you're doing wholesale, then you might have clients that are on net 30. And so, they've got 30 days from the day that you ship the product to pay you. So you got to be able to account for that float. You need an accountant, an attorney, all these things. Anyway, you can see the list. You can go through it. You could probably add more to it. But being able to understand what your costs are as it relates to the value is the winning equation, I think, for me. I don't know. Maybe I'm successful. Maybe I'm not. I'm doing okay. I'm pretty satisfied with where I'm at. But these are my opinions. You can take it for what it is, and maybe you can argue with me a little bit on it. So now that you know your costs, you can do the math. And I go back to my question number 2. Is it possible to do this project for less than what the customer is willing to pay and make a profit? And, I say profit, and that has to be something that is of value to you. And that could be anything. I've got a project I'm doing for a friend of mine that I quoted her a price that was probably a little bit less than I normally would charge. But I also know that, this is a friend, and so I'm doing them a favor. But they've taken care of me in the past, and so I'm taking care of them now. And so it's okay to accept something of value besides money. And, I have no-tiered sports ball tickets or, dinner for you and your family or, tickets to the theater or whatever it might be. Maybe it's a donation in your name. I don't know. All right. Hey, everybody. This is Future Derek. Turns out I did not talk about how to determine value, and I did a really great explanation of it, but I forgot to turn on my microphone. So you get the second take at it. Anyway, let's use this towel as an example. So I'm just going to search for dye sublimation towel, and that'll give me a look at what the prices are. Looking here, we can see prices on these are running anywhere from, $4, I see $10, $12, $8. I think these are blanks, I'm not quite sure. $8, etc., etc. Based on that, I would kind of guess that the price is somewhere between $5 and $10 and probably about $8. So that gives me a place to judge what the market might be able to bear for this towel. It doesn't take into account any of the design or anything else about it. It's just, what does a dye sublimation towel cost on Etsy? So that gives me a framework that I can work with to figure out what is the market going to bear for something like this. Now, it can go up or down depending on how popular or how viral this particular design might go. But it gives me a framework that I can work with. And from there, I can start doing some math to figure out how to make this product and still be profitable. Those are my thoughts. I kind of burned through it pretty quick tonight, but there are a lot of people that I have taken knowledge from, and I think that they have a lot of valuable things to talk about. One is Chris Doe. He has The Future on YouTube, and it's Future without an E. He talks about business from the perspective of a creative, especially in the graphic design. But I think there's a lot of value there outside of that category. Simon Sinek, Start With Why, great book. Entrepreneurship, Gary Vaynerchuk, not everybody's cup of tea. He's a little bit abrasive, maybe is the right word, but he doesn't pull any punches. And that's one of the things I love about him. If you ever see him talking to somebody about the business that they're in and why they're in it, you'll figure out very quickly what he values and where he's coming from and how he wants you to think. Austin Kleon did a series of books. First one's called Steal Like an Artist. Great. Totally recommend that to anybody who's feeling like they aren't creative. Then there's another guy that I really like on YouTube. He goes by the name of Struthless. His name is Cam Walker. And this is one of those that, oh geez, I love the way that he works. I love the way that he thinks and the way that he is vulnerable. So totally worth it. And also go back and talk to your customers. Figure out what they want. Figure out, what's valuable to them, and then figure out how to do it. And then just don't compromise yourself in the meantime. And that is the end of my PowerPoint.